Hello everyone, it's Stephanie, your CSA coach, and it is week 20 of our CSA shares. So after this full week of pickups, we have 4 more weeks. We have 24 weeks total. So please remember to continue to pick up your shares. If you're half shares, today or this week is a B week, and then we have 2 more A weeks and 2 more B weeks. One quick announcement, it was also in the email, scheduled for Saturday, October 15th, is a s'mores social on the farm. So stay tuned for more details on that. And it's obviously weather dependent since it'll be outside. So stay tuned for details on that. But if you're free on Saturday, October 15th, mark that on your calendar. All right, jumping right into what we have this week. Today was pretty rainy at pickup so far, but if you bared the weather and went and did your pick your owns, we have shishito peppers. Shishito peppers get stored in the fridge. I just store them right in this, so this is what I throw them in after a pickup, and then I put the lid on and store them in the fridge like that. But you can put them in a Ziploc bag or like a Debbie Meyer green bag. They can also be frozen. So we've been getting a lot of shishitos. The crop has been doing really well. So there's a lot of them, and you can preserve them by freezing them. They're great in stir fries. They're great just blistered, high heat, sauteed on the stovetop. This batch tends to be a little bit hotter, but typically 1 in 10 or 1 in 5 are spicy. So it's always a fun game that we play when we have shishitos, who gets the spicier ones. There are recipes on the blog for shishitos. Okay, we also have red onions. Red onions get stored in a cool, dry place away from potatoes. Really good raw, sliced nice and thin on top of salads. You could pickle them, you can saute them, you can put them into stir fries, you can do sheet pan meals. Onions are pretty easy to use. We have potatoes, red potatoes. They get stored in a cool, dry place away from our onions. We don't want to keep them in the same container because the moisture from the potatoes will make the onions go bad quicker. Potatoes are really good roasted. They're really good in grill packets. You can shred them and make like hash browns. You can chop them tiny and make roast them or saute them on the stovetop. I'm thinking I might showcase potatoes in next week's recipe, so stay tuned for that. We've been getting a lot of them, so I'm gonna play around with some recipes, so stay tuned. Maybe there'll be a recipe coming up. Otherwise, there are a lot of recipes. There's a potato crusted quiche. What else is there? There's potato cakes, which are really fun to make, like a mashed potato cake, and look super gourmet when you make them. So those are all on the blog if you're looking for different recipes. We are receiving honeynut squash. They're so cute and tiny. 2 honeynut squash stored in a cool, dry place. These do not last as long as our butternuts. So you don't butternut squash lasts months. This a couple weeks ideally. We want to use it within the next few weeks, but it's definitely not something you have to use this week. These are really good roasted, so I like to just cut them in half, scoop out the seeds, and throw them in put a little oil on them, a little seasoning, and throw them in the oven like that. So now that we have 4 of them, I have a family of 5, so it's harder if we only have 2. Now that we have 4, I'm gonna roast them this week, and we're gonna use them just as a side. These can be pureed. What else can we do with them? We can chop them up and just roast them in cubes. You can freeze the puree. You can also bake with it. And there are some squash recipes on the blog as well. So you can pretty much interchange your different squash recipes, like butternut squash, honeynut squash, butterkin. A lot of them are very similar, and you can cook them the same way and it'll just change up the flavor. Kind of like our onions and our other produce that we can kind of switch up a little bit. If we're using greens in a recipe, you can use kale, you can use Swiss chard, you can use collards. It'll just change up the flavor a little. So store that in a cool, dry place. We have green peppers. Green peppers get stored in the fridge, in your crisper drawer, or in the in a plastic bag. Great raw, great for our sheet pan fajitas or stir fries. Great in grill packets. These pretty rare, other than when I'm making like a sheet pan meal, these get served raw in our house. Our kids devour peppers. Same thing for sweet peppers, can get served raw, or you can roast them, saute them. They can be pickled. They can be, you could do like a roasted red pepper and preserve them as well. If you have a lot of peppers left over, you can slice these up, rinse them off, slice them up, and throw them in Ziploc bags and freeze them. And that makes great sheet pan meals for the winter when we don't have fresh peppers and things like that. So you could prep your peppers and onions and throw it in a Ziploc bag and have it frozen. And then you just pull it out and add it to the sheet pan meal. The last of our peppers is our hot peppers. You got to pick 4 hot peppers or 3 hot peppers. Jalapenos, cherry bombs. I don't remember what else was there. They get stored in the fridge, in your crisper drawer, or in a bag in the fridge. You can definitely freeze these. So we're gonna use them to add heat to a dish. They're great for salsas. They're great for dips. Any kind of spicy dish where you want the spice, you can use these. All of our hot peppers, if you remove the membranes and the seeds from the inside, you're taking away a little bit of the heat, so you're creating a milder version of the pepper. So that's where most of the heat is in the hot peppers. You're still gonna get heat, but if you don't want as much heat, then remove the membranes and the seeds and leave those out of a recipe. We received arugula. This is one of my absolute favorite things from the farm. I was telling Tom today that last week's arugula I didn't even share. I ate the whole bag all by myself. I really love it. The flavor is fantastic. The nutritional value is phenomenal. And I prefer it just like this, raw with a little bit of dressing on it. And then I actually throw like freshly grated Parmesan cheese on top, or like a harder cheese, just to add a little bit of different flavor. But you could change it up. We've got beets, we've got radishes, we've got fennel. There's lots of stuff you could have with it. But definitely can be served raw, get stored in the fridge, just like this. You can cook it too, so it's really good sauteed down. I'm pretty sure this will be showcased in this week's recipe. So stay tuned for that. I'll be working on that tomorrow. We received radishes. The first thing you want to do with the radishes is chop off the bottoms, store them in a Ziploc bag, and then the tops get stored in a separate Ziploc bag. The tops are just like any other green. You can saute them, you can turn them into green cubes, you can add them to smoothies, you can leave them in a salad, you can chop them up and eat them raw. If you're not going to use them, store them in your veggie scrap bag and use them to help flavor your broth. The bottoms, radishes can be roasted. There's a roasted radish recipe on the blog. They can be pickled. They can just be sliced thin and added to a salad. They're fun to just add color, or nice color to dishes. So both get stored in the fridge, but separately. Now also the same idea with our golden beets. So we're gonna take the beet part, the bottom root part off, store those in a Ziploc bag, and store the top green parts in a separate bag. Beets are great roasted, they're great raw, you can pickle them. I like to shred, if I'm using them raw, I like to shred them or chop them up nice and tiny and then throw them in a dish, usually on top of a salad or a slaw. The tops can be sauteed. These tops are really beautiful right now, so they just need to be quickly rinsed off and then throw them in a saute pan and saute them down. Same idea, if you're not going to use them, take them off and throw them in your veggie scrap bag for broth. We received dill. So dill gets stored in the fridge. Fill a glass with water, or at least probably like halfway with water. You can leave the band on or take it off, doesn't matter. Put this in the water and that's how it gets stored in the fridge. If you know you're not going to use this, you can preserve it by dehydrating it, or you can preserve it by freezing it. So I like to take a paper towel, throw a layer of the dill fronds on top of that paper towel, put another paper towel down, do another layer, and repeat that, and then that fits perfectly into a large Ziploc bag, and then I lay that flat into the freezer. It just makes for easy use if I defrost and use it for dips, or use it for seasonings, or use it for pickling, that kind of stuff. So that's our dill, gets stored in the fridge. A huge fennel, this gets stored in the fridge in a bag. Because this is bigger, I usually store it in a Debbie Meyer green bag. Fennel, probably my favorite way to serve. You can do fennel raw or cooked. Probably my favorite way is to roast it, to thinly slice the bulb and throw that in the oven and roast it. It just becomes like caramelized, and the flavor is really good. You can then take that and just serve it as a side, or you can add other veggies to it. But that's fennel. We also have bok choy. Bok choy gets stored in the fridge in a bag. Great sauteed, great added to stir fries. I know there's been a couple posts about bok choy, recipe posts, so go to our Facebook group and look for those recipes if you're looking for something different. I like to just saute it and serve it as a side. This head is a little bit smaller, but our white stems typically get separated because they take longer to cook than our leaves do. So when you're ready to cook it, wash it all off, separate out the white parts of the bok choy from the leaves, keep the leaves off to the side, start cooking the stems, and then cook the leaves after that. So that's our bok choy. And last but not least, new to the share this week is our raab. This gets stored in a bag just like our other greens. This is a leafy version, so you will not see florets on it. You'll just see the leaves and the stems. There's like a little floret, but it's not, it's a leafy version of raab. My favorite way to serve this is just sauteed. Saute it with some onion, some garlic, and just serve it as a side. Super healthy, really nutritious. That is it. So go back to what you have left from last week, start preserving things, use up what you have, and then focus on this week. Everything's gonna last throughout the week, so there's nothing that's pertinent that you need to use right away. Probably the arugula, I guess, but it's hardy and it lasts throughout the week. Post on Facebook if you have any troubles, or if you find any really good recipes that you love, please share them with the rest of us, and I will see you all next week. Thank you.